But a man can look at a distance and see nothing, just look. And a woman will say, what are you looking at? I don't know, just looking over there. You got to be looking at something. See a man, that's how we we empty all of our hurt, our anger, all of our stress. Men can gaze at nothing, at a hillside, at a mountain, and not really see anything. That's how we energize ourselves. That's why we don't have no crooked fingers. We forgive people. We let that anger go. Those unhealthy emotions are what can cause a lot of sicknesses. And you need to let them go. You need to learn how to forgive. You need to teach people. Now he's pounding up some berries with, see, this is the thing with my son. He always has to be authentic. He does everything the old way. And I love it. That's the way it should be. But we want to give you some samples that you can take to try out. This is my favorite. But all foods have there's a history behind a lot of them. This is pounded up, baked, dry meat. We pounded it up. It was given to the old ones that didn't have any teeth. Because we did that, it honored them. It honored my grandmother, because she was thinking of all the old ones that no longer had teeth. So she always kept this around to feed those people. And it blessed our house. It blessed my grandmother for thinking that way. But we have many other different types, and with all of our berries, you will never find a stem in our berries. My grandmother used to say, if you leave a stem on a chokecherry and somebody finds it in my chokecherry pudding, they're going to look at me like I'm the worstest woman. I'm a lazy woman. So we always had to get all the stems off. I do them first, and of course he checks over my work and usually finds the ones that I missed. So it's that's kind of, this is a good trade to teach. But if you can teach your children with stories, they'll never forget them. Any questions? I know I'm boring the heck out of you all.
Not at all.
1,000 questions. We don't have time to talk about it.
We have all night.
When does the black echinacea bloom?
When does it bloom?
No, what color is it?
Pink. It's pink, and you only need a little piece of it, not very much. The root grows about 6 foot deep. That's how the Indian people could foretell bad snows and stuff. Some of them could get the lining of a deer stomach and hold it up that has the web marks on it. If they were thick webs, then you was going to get a tough winter. They were one with nature. My dad used to say we're related to all of them. They are like an uncle to us, or an aunt. We feel the same way with the sun, the moon, every tree, the earth, all the grasses. They're our relatives. See, my grandmother, I was really fortunate to have been raised with, I spent 7 years with my 2 grandmothers. They were different bands of Cheyennes. One was just us, the Arrow people. Her name was Mary Brady. The other one was Sutta. That was my mother's mother. 2 different bands. They were the sacred buffalo hat. They didn't even talk to each other. Our house was in the middle. My dad's mother lived in a tent, and my grandmother lived in a log house. So I was the one that would go between them. And my grandmother would say, I bake too much bread, go give this to that old lady. So I'd run over there with a dish rag and give it to that old lady. And I said, old lady gives you this. She said, wait a minute. She'd open her trunk. I don't have my sewing machine. Give this material to that old lady. She can make a dress. So I take it back. That old lady gives you this material. And I went back and forth, and my dad said, make sure that their water is always full, their water bucket, their wood is always, they have plenty of wood. And he says, but don't be a nuisance. So I would sit in the shade and watch them. Even though they didn't even talk to each other. I would see my dad's mother walk down to the creek, and I would sneak up on her because I didn't want to be a nuisance. I would peek over the bank. She would be talking to someone. I could hear her laugh from time to time. I couldn't see anybody. One time I even climbed a tree to look down. I couldn't see anybody. So I went back to the house. I was pretty puzzled. As soon as I seen her walking up when the sun was going to set, I made a big circle the other way, ran across the creek, and I looked for whoever she was talking to. Couldn't see anybody. But at the base of that tree where she had laid her blanket, there was a piece of a potato, a piece of meat, and a piece of bread. She was feeding the tree. They are the ones that are related to everything. The Jitistas, the arrow people. They're all related to everything. They talk to everything. And it was, she had special skills. Women were the only ones that can butcher with that band. Man cannot butcher unless he goes out and shoots buffalo or something. But whenever my dad would bring in a deer, she would say, don't gut it. When he set it down on the ground, he would say, go and call my mother. I would tell her, there's a deer out here for you. Boy, she'd start sharpening her knives. No man could help her. She would get all my girl cousins to hold the deer legs. Cut them open. They would, her band would eat deer raw. She would go inside the gut and pull out a growth that's inside of the big stomach. And she would cut it open. We call it the Bible because it has pages. She would shake out the manure and wash it in the blood that was in a diaphragm. And her daughter would bring up a little sack of salt and she would put it in, and they'd eat it. They made it look so good. She would dip her hands in that blood and she would walk up to my dad's horse. And she would say, when you go into battle, you're not going to be scared of the enemy. You're going to always bring my son home. She rubbed that blood on that horse's head. This is how they taught their sons to be warriors. One day she did the same thing, but she had all of us kids in her line, and she put it on our faces. I felt so proud to be an Indian. It just tightened up, and just, you know how blood gets. Years later, I asked her after her husband returned and she moved to him. I asked her, why did you do that to us? She said, from this day on, you're going to be welcome in every home. You're going to be a son to everyone. You're never going to go into a house looking for dirt or sniffing or refusing foods. She says they're going to always welcome you. You're going to be a son to everyone. And that's the way it's been. Throughout my life, I can go into almost any Indian home and be welcome. But this is how they taught you. You know, about putting blood on our face. They're turning you into social services right now. But it's, a lot of our teachings are, we use that kind of format. That's stuff that's handed down from generation to generation. All of you have legends, stories that you need to remember. You need to ask your dad, your grandfathers. You need to carry this on. Because the children will always ask them questions. What are you going to tell them? So this is a great place, this little hallowed ground here is a great place where you can bring your children and lead your legacy. Show them your legacy here with all these plants. The yellow choke cherries, the red choke cherries. See the choke cherry there? It has a story too. The Cheyenne cannot kill a doe until the berries on a choke cherry become red. Once they turn red, then it's all right to kill a doe because the little one can take care of itself. There's stories with them. You use them to get the marrow out. They use them to spread dry meat that he has here. The Crow tribe use them as switches in their sweat lodges. They hit themselves wherever they hurt. But you can bring your child here and show them one of these plants, or take them to the mountains. And
I'm sorry. I just had a quick question. I see you have some like smudging bundles.
oh well, these are woman sage. They belong in a lodge of a woman because that lodge belonged to her.
Now is that just regular sage?
Yeah. No, it's a different type. She grows it here too. We have it growing here, but it's used to calm people down. You can make a tea with it. It smells good. You can burn it as a smudge. You can boil it for skin problems. Your skin is your nervous system. This is what you can boil it and you can rub it on rashes. But then you got to understand why you're nervous in the first place. What's causing you this? Because this is your nervous system. It's also your cooling system. But this makes harmony inside the lodge. If someone has many anger issues, you can get them a bundle of this. You just smell it. Have them smell it, have them burn it. Just give it to them as a gift. We do about 26 or 30 of these that we give away all the time. Never sell them, just give them away. But it makes a good tea also. But that's your woman sage.
Thank you.
Your man sage is different. I don't know if we have any. This one is your ceremonial sage. Anytime you violate a taboo, like if you pointed at somebody. See, Indian Cheyenne people, we cannot point with your hand. If you do that, if I point at a tree, I'm disrespecting it. If I point at a lake, there'll never be fish that'll come to my hook. If I can't stir up soup with a knife, I have 72 taboos in my family. Whenever you violate one, you have to burn one of these things. You know how Indian people, Cheyenne people point? Well, I got to show you a story first. Have you ever heard of the Crazy Horse Monument? Well, did you see on the news yesterday that the arm fell off? Remember he was pointing? Fell off. You didn't see that? the arm fell off. So they're going to give that monument to the Cheyennes. They're going to make it point like this. Actually, his arm's still up. I just use that because they've been working on it for 99 years. I guess about another 2,000 they might get completed. Any questions?
So are there different numbers of taboos?
One of the people have been, look at them in the back, standing up all. You're outstanding.
They are outstanding, yep.
No chairs, no shade, you're strong.
But if you want to try some of this, you're sure welcome. My son can explain all of this. A lady gave us this corn, and that's what we have parched corn with. How do they make blue corn? By blue cornmeal. The Zuni. My uncle was a Zuni, and they make this bread that's blue. How do they make it blue? Because if I grind this up, it's white. It's not blue. They use a plant that we picked a while back. Creosote plant. We call it bitter sage. You skin that. The southern tribes use it as a cure-all for any disease. They make a tea out of the bark. For cancer, for any kind of sickness. It was a gift that was given to them by the gods. You take the bark off of them and you burn them. They're the ones you add to your corn to make blue corn. The ashes of the creosote. One of the oldest plants is growing down in Lucerne, California. Lucerne Valley. A professor determined its age to be 11,700 years old. It's a creosote ring. It's been growing for that long. We use it as pipe campers. But there's a lot of magic in a lot of our foods because foods are a medicine. That's how we truly believe. You never throw them. You always, you never cook when you're angry. If you cook when you're angry, you might as well throw the food away because it's going to make people angry. That must have been pretty good. You never even asked a question. Let's take the tops off. But my son, we even got a plant press here just in case you guys get to ask too many questions. But we eat everything on a buffalo. This comes from my favorite food, buffalo hoof soup. Here are the hooves from a buffalo. Inside of each hoof, each side, there are 3 bones. When you eat them with Indian corn, the old folks used to get these part, and there's no meat in a hoof. It's all tendon because their feet freeze in the wintertime. They eat the tendon from it, and then you'll call a child, and you'll say, here, I'm going to give you a mare and a coat, this coat. Those were the toys of the Indian children. See, this is the stories that are handed down. One lady had a stroke, and she asked for my presence at the hospital. I didn't know what I could tell that woman. She was a Sundance woman, a holy woman. So, for some reason, I got my bones, my 2 bones, and I went up to see her. When I went into her room, half of her mouth was sagging and her arms down. She was drooling, and she saw me, and I walked up to her and reached into my pocket and got out these bones, and her face just lit up. I grabbed her arm that she couldn't move, and I put these and placed them inside and grabbed the other one. And she started talking. She had a tough time for a while, but she started talking. She says, when I was a little girl, my grandfather used to give me these when he ate. He'd say, here's a mare and its colt. She says, these are your horses. And she would put her hand on it like this, and she would say, boy, it almost bucked me off. She came home in 2 weeks. But she always had these. See, that's where memory plays a big part of healing. All the wonderful memories that you have. So if you want to come up and get a little bowl, what I recommend, and that guy in the cooking show always say, and I insist, is to try the parched corn mixed with some chokecherry. Or just to try parched corn by itself. And pounded up dry meat. You've got buckleberries and wild cherries, wild plums.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Did any of the tribes used to use Indian paintbrush medicinally?
Indian paintbrush?
Yeah, medicinally.
You know, every tribe uses a plant differently, and their teachings are different. A lot of the paintbrush, the Cheyennes, we did have it in our medicine cabinet. But, every tribe is different, and you gotta respect them for what they believe in. Many of them, just like the Creator said, I gave every one of you a spirit. They can heal about anything if you talk to them right. Here's some of the 5 gallons of chokecherries will make about 150 of these patties. We do them all the time. He'll be teaching with them next year. Yeah. You can put them in. Any other questions?
Have you ever thought of spreading all your knowledge to a community college like the Sheridan College?
Oh yeah. I'm always ready. Matter of fact, we're even thinking about doing a book. Give me that paper, that poster. Where'd it go? They made a poster, and it's fantastic. It's going to make a good cover for a book. But this is going to tell the stories of every plant. But you got to understand how you're going to teach them. You need to know the story if you're going to teach your children. Because that's going to be your legacy. That's what you're handing down.
Yeah. Currently, we teach at Chief Dull-Knife College in Linwood. It's kind of like a community college, but if you ask for the Tall Bulls, they'll point you to that direction. So we're always down there at the college giving talks, teaching classes. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, summertime. That's when our classes are. And be warned, if any of you are willing to take it, it is always during the hottest part of the day, 3:30 to 5. So
Is it indoors or outdoors?
it's a little mixture of both.
And it's free.
And you get a free meal ticket too, so. Yeah, the patties that we have here, the chokecherry patties, that's what I was kind of making a mess with when he was talking. I was pounding on something. That's how you make a chokecherry patty. You flatten up the berries, mash up the pit, everything with it. There better not be a stem in there, otherwise nobody's going to come to your meal afterwards because you're lazy.
But you eat the pit too.
Yeah.
You just turn to the patty from the juice.
Yeah.
Just when everything's right there.
Yep. So it's really watery when you pound it up first, but as soon as it starts to dry, it starts to harden, and it becomes kind of pliable in a way, to where you can, once it dries enough, you can flip it, dry it some more, and once it's totally dry, you put it away.
You dry it out in the sun then? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in the old days, we would have things of rawhide, animal skin like this. This is a pounding dish. So what I was doing was really shoddy. The Cheyenne woman would have laughed at me because they don't make a mess like I did with this. So if you're going to pound berries in a big quantity, you get something like this. This is rawhide. And so you fill it with berries and you get a hammer or a maul and you just start pounding and hammering. As soon as you get enough mush, you start making your patties. You'll have a type of skin that you have. It's a flat, clean skin. You lay that out somewhere where it's sunny and windy and you lay your patties on top of it. That skin will be stained afterwards. It's going to be your patty drying area. That's a dedicated surface, you know. But that's how you dry your chokecherry patties.
Do they get any sweeter?
So one thing I'm going to say is the plum is condensed sour. This is like eating a lemon. That's kind of what you craved back then if you're just eating meat and plants. There was no salt and pepper, there's no seasonings, no mustard, no candy you can get today or back then. If you wanted sour, you got sour. You either got sour from that or you got sour from the gallbladder of an animal. But chokecherry patties are definitely sweeter. They taste a lot more better. But,
so I saw you pounding them with just a stone.
Yeah.
I mean, I've eaten a lot of chokecherries, but the seeds seem really hard.
Yeah.
Are they that easy to pound?
If you have good teeth, you can crack them with your teeth, but I do not recommend that. It's a good way to bust a filling. But yeah, you just pound them up, bust up the seeds, mix them all together, make them into a patty, and lay them out to dry. After about 2 hours, you go out there, flip them over, and dry them again. After about 2 days, they should be dried.
Don't taste as bitter as it does when you eat it right off the tree.
It's a lot different than a regular chokecherry. But this is your, you mix it, you can make pemmican.
This is just chokecherries, what you were pounding, right?
Yep.
So you don't have to pound this.
That one's a plum seed.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, we use those ones as jewelry. Old woman used to burn marks into them with a stick, and they'd make dice out of them. So you could make beads or dice. Yeah. Yep. I'm sorry, my hands are a little dirty. The chokecherry.
Mixed up with that corn.
You're more than welcome to. Grab a plate, take a scoop. So, I was going to get a plastic ladle, but we already have Tupperware. I wanted to get traditional and bring something real. This is a bison horn spoon. This would have been something they had in the lodge back in those days. So, you want something to scoop? Yeah. Give her a scoop.